Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very pleased to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our journey today. The morning mist had not yet dispersed at Beckett Ceramics estate when Gareth Thornton stood on the terrace. With a cup of Earl Grey tea in his hands, his gaze fell on the workshop in the distance. The morning light filtered through the mist, giving the ancient building a hazy golden glow. His phone suddenly vibrated, displaying a voice message from Vanessa. Gareth pressed play, and his wife's voice came through the speaker, cold and resolute. "You've been kicked out of the family business. Wait for the lawyer's call." Immediately after, another voice message popped up, this time from Vanessa's sister Philippa. "This is a unanimous decision of the board. Don't persist any further." After listening, Gareth's fingers lingered on the screen for a moment, then replied with two words, "Understood." He put down the teacup and turned toward the study, where all the documents his late father-in-law had left were stored, including those forgotten legal documents. Beckett Ceramics was a family business with 300 years of history, renowned for its handcrafted high-end ceramics. Gareth had entered this family through his marriage to Vanessa, and over 12 years, he had gone from being an outsider to becoming the actual helmsman of the enterprise. His father-in-law, Desmond Beckett, had entrusted him with 45% of the shares on his deathbed, which was both trust and responsibility. 3 months ago, in the boardroom of Beckett Ceramics, the atmosphere was tense. Vanessa stood in front of the projection screen, excitedly presenting a brand new corporate reform plan. Beside her stood Lawrence Sterling, a promising young business consultant, renowned in the industry as an expert in traditional industry innovation. Lawrence pointed at the sharply rising curve on the chart, his voice full of persuasion. "Traditional craftsmanship can no longer meet the demands of the modern market. Our plan will completely change Beckett Ceramics' production model, introducing automated assembly lines, developing fast-moving consumer products, and capturing the young market. According to my predictions, within 3 years, the turnover will double twice." Gareth flipped through the 100-page plan, filled with trendy business jargon and radical reform measures. He closed the folder and looked at everyone in the meeting room. "This plan will destroy Beckett Ceramics' 300-year heritage. Our core competitive advantage is craftsmanship and quality, not mass production." Vanessa's face immediately darkened. "Gareth, you're too conservative. Look at our competitors, they're all innovating, while we're still clinging to antiques. If Father were still here, he would surely support the reform." "Quite the contrary." Gareth stood up, his voice calm but firm. "What your father feared most was someone sacrificing quality for short-term profits. He said that the soul of Beckett Ceramics is the craftsman's spirit, not industrialized production." Lawrence interjected. "Mr. Thornton, if I may say so, your understanding of modern business seems to be stuck in the last century. Tradition doesn't mean stagnation. We need to evolve with the times." The meeting ended in disagreement, without reaching any consensus. Gareth returned to his office and looked out the window, where he could see the old masters in the workshop meticulously crafting each piece. Among them, the eldest, Edmund, had been working there for 45 years, and his craftsmanship represented the highest standard of Beckett Ceramics. The sound of the telephone interrupted Gareth's thoughts. It was Ambrose, the old butler, who had served the Beckett family for 30 years and knew all the ins and outs of the family. "Mr. Thornton, there's something I think you should know." Ambrose's voice was hesitant. "Mrs. Vanessa has been meeting frequently with Mr. Sterling in the estate's glass greenhouse, sometimes staying for hours. Last night, I saw them leave together, and they didn't return until the early hours." Gareth gripped the phone tightly, his knuckles whitening with the force. During this time, he had already noticed changes in Vanessa. She had become distant, often returning home late, and had set a new password on her phone. He had initially thought it was just estrangement caused by work pressure, but now it seemed the matter was far more complicated than he had imagined. That night, Gareth didn't go home, but spent the night in the office. He opened the safe and took out a sealed envelope that his father-in-law had given him on his deathbed. The envelope was marked, "Open in case of emergency." Gareth hesitated for a moment, then tore open the seal. Inside was a detailed legal document and a handwritten letter. His father-in-law's strong handwriting came into view. "Dear Gareth, when you read this letter, it means Beckett Ceramics is facing a major crisis. I know my daughters. They are intelligent but impatient, ambitious but easily manipulated. This document is my final arrangement to protect the family business. Remember, true power lies not in control, but in protection. Gareth carefully read the legal document, and the content shocked him. It turned out that the 45% of shares he held were not ordinary shares, but preferred shares with special rights. On key decisions involving changes to the company's core values, disposal of major assets, introduction of external investors, etc., he had veto power. More importantly, there was a secret, concerted action agreement. Several employees holding small shares, including Edmund, would maintain a consistent position with him at crucial moments, together holding an additional 11% of shares. Gareth carefully put away the documents. He began to understand his father-in-law's foresight. This was not just an arrangement of shares, but the last line of defense for Beckett Ceramics' tradition. In the following weeks, Vanessa and Lawrence's actions became increasingly blatant. They frequently convened small meetings, courting other shareholders and management. Although Philippa had reservations about Lawrence's radical plan, she ultimately took sides under her sister's pressure. One rainy night, Gareth returned home early. When he opened the door, he heard Vanessa and Lawrence talking in the living room. He didn't immediately enter, but stood in the shadow of the entryway. With Philippa's support, we now control 55% of the voting rights. Lawrence's voice was full of confidence. At next week's board meeting, we can formally propose removing Gareth from his position as CEO. Once he loses management authority, the entire reform plan can proceed smoothly. He's too stubborn, doesn't listen to any advice. Vanessa's voice carried weariness and irritation. I've tried to communicate with him, but he's like a stone, completely inflexible. Don't worry, darling. Lawrence's tone turned gentle. When we control the company, everything will improve, including our future. There was a silence, then the rustling of clothes. Gareth turned and disappeared into the rainy night. The rain hit his face, ice cold and cutting, but not as cold as the chill in his heart. The next day, Gareth contacted those who had signed the concerted action agreement. They met secretly in the old office of the workshop, a place his father-in-law used to frequent. Mr. Beckett visited each of us before he died, said the old craftsman Edmund, his hands calloused from years of working with ceramics. He said that someday, someone would try to destroy Beckett Ceramics' tradition, and when that happened, we should support you. The other veteran employees nodded. They had all followed the Beckett family for decades, witnessing the ups and downs of the enterprise. Our shares aren't many, but together they add up to 11%, said another veteran employee. According to the agreement, on key decisions, we will maintain a consistent position with you. Gareth looked gratefully at these loyal employees. With their support, he effectively controlled 56% of the voting rights on key decisions. But he didn't act immediately. Instead, he chose to wait. The turning point finally came. It was a gloomy Monday morning when the board of directors met as scheduled. Vanessa proposed a motion to remove Gareth as CEO, citing outdated management concepts hindering company development. The voting results showed that Vanessa, Philippa, and several other newly appointed directors supported the motion. According to the apparent share ratio, they indeed had the advantage. According to the board resolution, Gareth Thornton will no longer serve as CEO of Beckett Ceramics. Vanessa announced the result with a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. Gareth slowly stood up and took a document from his briefcase. Directors, before accepting this decision, I would like to remind everyone of a special clause in the company's Articles of Association. He projected the document onto the screen, showing the original agreement signed by his father-in-law. According to this agreement, the 45% of shares I hold are Class A preferred shares, with veto rights on matters related to changes in the company's core values, major personnel adjustments, etc. The meeting room fell into a deathly silence. Lawrence quickly flipped through his own documents, his expression growing darker. "This is impossible." Vanessa almost screamed. Father never mentioned this. Because he hoped to never have to use it, Gareth put away the document, his gaze sweeping across everyone present. "But since you've chosen betrayal, I have no choice but to exercise my rights. From now on, any proposal attempting to change Beckett Ceramics' core values will be vetoed by me." Lawrence tried to salvage the situation. "This is just a technical clause. We can pursue legal avenues." "Don't bother, Mr. Sterling," Gareth interrupted him. "My legal team has confirmed that this agreement is completely legal and valid. Moreover, according to the agreement's terms, any attempt to circumvent these rights will trigger an automatic acquisition clause. I have the right to forcibly purchase other shareholders' shares at market price." The meeting ended in chaos. Vanessa and Lawrence urgently convened their core team to discuss countermeasures, but they soon discovered the situation was far worse than they had imagined. Not only that, Gareth had already begun to counterattack. He convened a special shareholders meeting, formally vetoing all reform plans proposed by Lawrence. At the same time, he initiated an investigation into Lawrence's qualifications, discovering that all his previous projects had ended in failure, and 2 companies had even gone bankrupt due to his radical reforms. The news quickly spread throughout the industry. Several banks that had already agreed to loans suspended approval, citing management instability, increased operational risk. Suppliers also began to worry, demanding early settlement of invoices. Vanessa then realized the severity of the situation. She tried to negotiate with Gareth, but he refused to see her. In desperation, she could only threaten Gareth through voice messages, which was the message mentioned at the beginning. But Gareth's reaction was completely unexpected. After receiving the message, not only did he not compromise, but he took even more aggressive action. His lawyers sent a formal notification to the board of directors. Given that Vanessa and Lawrence's actions had seriously damaged the company's interests, he would exercise his rights as a preferred shareholder to initiate the forced acquisition procedure of other shareholders' shares. At the same time, a more explosive news spread in London's business circle. Gareth was in contact with an international foundation dedicated to protecting traditional craftsmanship, preparing to sell his shares. If the transaction went through, this foundation would gain control of Beckett Ceramics, and its charter clearly stated, never change the traditional techniques of the companies they invested in. This news completely shattered Vanessa and Lawrence's psychological defense. If Gareth really executed this plan, not only would they lose control of the company, but they might be completely expelled. The most terrifying part was that, according to the agreement, Gareth's special rights would be transferred along with the shares, and the new controlling shareholder would inherit these veto rights. Panic swept the entire board of directors. Philippa was the first to waver and sought out Gareth, trying to persuade him to change his mind. But Gareth's attitude was exceptionally firm. "You made your choice. Now you must bear the consequences." In desperation, Vanessa began frantically calling Gareth. From threats and intimidation to pleas and concessions, she used every possible means, but Gareth never answered. Her phone showed that in 48 hours, she had made 92 calls, all directed to voicemail. Meanwhile, Lawrence was also in trouble. His reform plan had become a worthless piece of paper, and the consulting fees agreed upon were also lost due to the project's suspension. Worse still, his reputation plummeted after this failure, and other companies that had planned to hire him canceled their collaboration intentions. Under the immense pressure, the relationship between Vanessa and Lawrence began to crack. They blamed each other for misjudgments. The once intimate allies became strangers who shifted blame onto one another. Finally, facing the threat of losing everything, Vanessa was forced to accept the conditions imposed by Gareth. She would retain 15% of ordinary shares, but had to surrender all management and decision-making rights. These shares would only receive fixed dividends, and in case of future sale, Gareth would have the right of first refusal. Lawrence was permanently banned from entering Beckett Ceramics, and all his proposals were nullified. Philippa's shares were diluted to 10%, also losing decision-making power. The divorce process was initiated immediately. Faced with irrefutable evidence of infidelity, Vanessa barely had room for negotiation. She not only lost her husband, but also her status and dignity within the Beckett family. The division of property was also extremely unfavorable to her. Apart from the 15% of shares, she was left with virtually nothing. On the day of signing the divorce agreement, an oppressive atmosphere pervaded the law firm's meeting room. Vanessa looked at Gareth, trying to find a trace of emotion on his face, but saw only coldness. "Gareth, do we really have to come to this? 12 years of marriage, ending like this?" Her voice carried a last hope. Gareth raised his head, his gaze calm as water. From the moment you chose betrayal, our marriage was already dead. I'm just handling the aftermath." He signed the document and stood up to leave. Vanessa suddenly grabbed his sleeve. "Can't you give me one chance? Even for the sake of the past." Gareth gently freed himself from her hand. "The past? Do you mean those days when you and Lawrence conspired in the greenhouse? Or those nights when you discussed how to oust me in our own home?" He turned and left. Some things, once broken, can never be repaired. The meeting room door closed, and Vanessa collapsed into the chair. She finally realized that she had not only lost her marriage, but also the legacy her father had left her. That empire that once belonged to her now had nothing to do with her. Beckett Ceramics estate returned to calm. Gareth stood in the workshop, watching the craftsmen work with dedication. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, shining on the exquisite ceramics. Each piece gleamed with a soft luster. The old craftsman Edmund approached him. "Mr. Thornton, old Beckett would be proud of you." Gareth smiled slightly. "I only did what needed to be done. Tradition needs protection, just as these ceramics need care." In the distance, Vanessa's car slowly drove out of the estate's main gate. She looked back one last time at this place where she had lived for more than 30 years, which now no longer belonged to her. Tears blurred her vision, but she knew that all this was the consequence of her own choices. 2 years later, in autumn, at a private club in London's Mayfair district, Gareth was discussing an upcoming charity auction with several ceramic collectors. Under his leadership, Beckett Ceramics had not only maintained tradition, but had also created the Master Bespoke series, where each piece was handcrafted by experienced artisans, in limited editions, causing a sensation in the collecting world. The highlight of this auction is a Qianlong Dynasty-style dinner set, completely restored according to the Imperial Palace Museum's documents. Gareth explained to the guests. "We spent an entire year researching glaze formulas, finally perfectly recreating the techniques of that era." A collector from Hong Kong commented admiringly, "Mr. Thornton, you haven't just preserved Beckett Ceramics tradition, you've given it new life. That is true innovation." At that moment, Nathaniel, Gareth's lawyer, approached and whispered something in his ear. Gareth's expression didn't change, he just nodded slightly. "Gentlemen, excuse me." Gareth politely took his leave and followed Nathaniel to the club's smoking room. "What's so urgent?" Gareth lit a cigar. Nathaniel opened his briefcase and took out a report. The latest news about Lawrence Sterling. His consulting company officially declared bankruptcy last month, with debts exceeding £2 million. Gareth took a puff of his cigar, the smoke swirling in the air. "As expected." "Not just that," Nathaniel continued. "The 3 projects he undertook after leaving Beckett Ceramics all failed. One of them involved converting a century-old winery into a chain of bars, which went bankrupt in less than a year. The investors are suing him, accusing him of exaggerated advertising and professional incompetence." Gareth looked out the window at autumnal London wrapped in a golden sunset. Ambition without capability is destined to fail. There's also news about Vanessa. Nathaniel turned to another page. She recently applied for an advance on dividends from Beckett Ceramics, citing financial difficulties. According to the agreement, this requires your approval. Gareth was silent for a moment. "Proceed according to the agreement. She's entitled to receive normal dividends, but the advance request must be reviewed by the board of directors." Meanwhile, in a small apartment in East London, Vanessa was sorting clothes she had just bought from a discount store. 2 years had completely changed her life. After the divorce, she tried to maintain her previous standard of living with the 15% share dividends, but soon discovered it was impossible. She tried to start her own business, opening an exclusive ceramics shop, trying to leverage the Beckett family name. But she quickly discovered that without the support of the family business, she was nobody. The shop closed after less than a year, leaving her with a large debt. The most ironic discovery was that she actually didn't understand ceramics at all. During her time at Beckett Ceramics, she had focused on financial statements and market share, completely ignoring the artistic value and production techniques. Her phone rang. It was Lawrence calling. She hesitated for a moment, but finally answered. "Vanessa, I heard you're not doing very well lately." Lawrence's voice sounded exhausted. "I could say the same about you." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "I heard your company went bankrupt." "Those are just rumors," Lawrence insisted. "I'm preparing a new project that will surely succeed." I was thinking perhaps we could collaborate again. Enough, Lawrence, Vanessa interrupted him. We both know what happened. Your theories, your grand plans, were just castles in the air. How can you say that? Lawrence raised his voice. You were the one who asked me to reform Beckett Ceramics. Yes, I called you. Vanessa's voice turned cold. And you took advantage of my ambition, pushing me into the abyss. Now we've both received what we deserve. She hung up the phone and looked out the window. The autumn wind blew, fallen leaves dancing in the street. She remembered that autumn 2 years ago, when she was still the lady of Beckett Ceramics, living on the estate, enjoying a privileged life. Now, she could only count the days waiting for the next dividend in this small apartment. Lawrence's situation was even worse than Vanessa's. After initiating bankruptcy proceedings, he not only lost all his assets, but also faced multiple lawsuits. Those investors he had once convinced had become his creditors. At an annual industry association meeting, Lawrence tried to rebuild his contacts. But when people discovered his identity, they found excuses to move away. The business people who had once eagerly sought him out now avoided him like the plague. Mr. Sterling? A voice sounded behind him. Lawrence turned and saw an unfamiliar middle-aged man. I'm Barnaby, Secretary General of the British Family Business Association. The man handed him his card with a serious expression. Lawrence's eyes reflected a glimmer of hope. Mr. Barnaby, pleased to meet you. I don't know why you're looking for me. We've been following the Beckett Ceramics case, Barnaby said directly. Your name has been added to our industry blacklist. This means that no member company of the association will hire your services. Lawrence turned pale. That's unfair. The failure of Beckett Ceramics wasn't entirely my responsibility. Perhaps the failure wasn't completely your responsibility, Barnaby said coldly. But your attempt to destroy a 300-year-old traditional company goes against our values. The core of family businesses is heritage, not subversion. With that, Barnaby turned and left, leaving Lawrence standing alone. He looked around and noticed that others were watching him strangely. He realized he was completely finished in this sector. Finally, Lawrence was forced to leave this circle and work as an ordinary salesman at a small trading company. The once impeccably dressed and confident business consultant now squeezed into the subway to commute, chasing after meager commissions. Philippa wasn't doing well either. Although she retained 10% of the shares, she had lost decision-making power and was like a ghost in the company. The other shareholders vividly remembered her betrayal and rarely invited her to participate in board meetings. One day, she plucked up the courage to seek out Gareth and discuss the company's future direction. She waited all afternoon in the meeting room until finally Gareth emerged after finishing a meeting. Gareth, may I steal a few minutes? Philippa asked cautiously. Gareth stopped and looked at her calmly. What is it? I want to talk about the company's future development plans. Philippa took out a document she had prepared. I have some ideas. Philippa, Gareth interrupted her. According to the shareholders' agreement, you no longer participate in the company's operational decisions. If you have any suggestions, you can present them at the annual shareholders meeting. I know, but I wanted. Philippa bit her lip. I wanted to contribute to the family business. After all, it's also my father's legacy. Gareth's gaze turned piercing. Now you remember your father's legacy? Where was this thinking when you and Vanessa were conspiring to change everything? Philippa lowered her head, speechless. She knew Gareth was right. The past betrayal was an indelible stain. If there's nothing else, I have another meeting, Gareth said before leaving. Philippa remained alone in the empty hallway, feeling a deep loneliness. Although she was still a member of the Beckett family, she had lost her family's trust and respect. Beckett Ceramics flourished under Gareth's leadership. He didn't stagnate, but made gradual innovations while preserving tradition. The old craftsmen continued to pass on ancient techniques, while young designers joined the team, injecting modern aesthetics into the classics. Gareth launched the successor program, selecting talented apprentices to be personally guided by master craftsmen. This program not only ensured the transmission of skills, but also attracted widespread media attention. The BBC produced a special documentary about how Beckett Ceramics preserved traditional techniques in modern society. At an international ceramic art exhibition, Beckett Ceramics' booth became the center of attention. Visitors from around the world constantly arrived, including renowned collectors and museum representatives. The Japanese ceramic master Nakamura specifically sought out Gareth and made a deep bow. "Mr. Thornton, your defense of tradition is admirable. In this impatient era, to be able to stand firm against interests and do the right thing is truly exceptional." Gareth responded with humility. "Traditional craftsmanship is a treasure of human civilization that deserves our protection." Beckett Ceramics' success proves that respecting tradition does not contradict commercial success. On the third day of the exhibition, Gareth unexpectedly encountered Vanessa. She was standing in front of Beckett Ceramics' booth, absorbed in looking at the exquisite exhibited pieces. She was dressed simply, very different from how she was 2 years ago. Gareth approached her and calmly asked, "Need a guide?" Vanessa started, turned, and saw it was Gareth. A complex emotion crossed her eyes. Finally, she just said softly, "These pieces are truly beautiful." Both stood side by side, silently contemplating the exhibits. After a long while, Vanessa finally spoke. "Now I understand why you insisted so much back then. These aren't just merchandise, they're art. They're the transmission of a culture." Gareth didn't respond, just listened in silence. "If I could go back." Vanessa's voice trembled slightly. "Time doesn't go backward," Gareth interrupted her, his voice calm, but with an unwavering determination. "We all must take responsibility for our choices." He turned to leave, walked a few steps, and then stopped. "Vanessa, you never really understood the value of Beckett Ceramics. It didn't need to be saved. It needed respect and protection." With that, Gareth walked away without looking back. Vanessa remained motionless, watching his silhouette disappear into the crowd. She knew that between them everything was over, completely and irrevocably. Time flows, and the spring of the 5th year arrived punctually. Beckett Ceramics was celebrating its 300th anniversary, a historic moment. The estate was newly decorated, with distinguished guests from around the world gathered. Gareth stood in front of the newly inaugurated Beckett Ceramics Museum, delivering a commemorative speech. His voice resonated throughout the estate through the speakers. 300 years ago, the ancestors of the Beckett family lit the first kiln on this land. Today, that fire continues to burn. It has witnessed the change of dynasties, lived through the Industrial Revolution, survived 2 world wars, and now faces new challenges. But regardless of how times change, Beckett Ceramics has always maintained one belief: true value lies in quality, not quantity, in heritage, not subversion. Below, the applause was deafening. Politicians, collectors, art critics, journalists, and ceramic lovers from around the world were applauding the perseverance of this legendary company. After the celebration, Gareth entered the museum alone. Here were displayed the masterpieces of the Beckett family over 300 years, each piece telling a fragment of history. He stopped in front of his father-in-law's photograph and stood in silence for a long time. In the photo, Desmond Beckett had a deep gaze, as if he could see the future. Gareth made a deep bow, whispering in his heart, "I have not betrayed your trust." At that moment, Nathaniel quickly approached. "Gareth, there's news you should know. Vanessa has applied for personal bankruptcy protection." Gareth turned, showing no emotion. "What's her situation?" "Very bad." Nathaniel reviewed the information on his phone. "She has large debts and now lives in social housing in the suburbs. It said she works as a cashier in a supermarket to survive." Gareth was silent for a moment, then said, "Make sure her dividends are paid on time. That's what she's entitled to." "There's also news about Lawrence Sterling," Nathaniel continued. "He has left Britain. It said he went to Eastern Europe and works as a sales representative at a small company. He tried to rise again there, but no one trusts him." Gareth walked to the window, contemplating the estate's landscape. The sunset bathed everything in gold, smoke gently rising from the workshop's chimney, just like 300 years ago. "Everyone faces the consequences of their choices," Gareth said quietly. "That's the truth of life." Night fell, but the warmth of the celebration persisted. The guests gradually departed, and the estate slowly regained its tranquility. Gareth returned to his office, where tomorrow's agenda awaited. Meeting with acquisition representatives from the Louvre to discuss manufacturing custom pieces for the museum. He turned on the computer and began reviewing emails. One was from the Tokyo National Museum, inviting Beckett Ceramics to participate in next year's East-West Ceramic Art Exchange exhibition. Another was from the New York Metropolitan Museum, asking if they could acquire representative works of Beckett ceramics for their collection. Gareth smiled slightly. These recognitions weren't just commercial success, but an affirmation of Beckett ceramics' 300-year legacy. He believed that after another 300 years, Beckett ceramics would still stand on this land, continuing its legend. Outside, moonlight bathed the ancient estate. In the distant workshop, the night shift craftsmen continued working, the kiln's glow shining in the darkness. It was a flame that would never extinguish, like the spirit of the Beckett family, passing from generation to generation, eternally. Gareth shut down the computer, preparing to return home. He knew that tomorrow would be a new day, with new challenges awaiting him. But he had already proven one thing. Defending tradition doesn't mean stagnation. True innovation is creating the future based on respect for history. As for those who chose betrayal, they had already paid the price for their choices. Vanessa struggled in poverty, Lawrence sank in failure, Philippa suffered in marginalization. They thought they could easily change everything, but in the end, they only changed their own destiny, from glory to downfall, from the center to the periphery. Time is the fairest judge. It doesn't accelerate for anyone's ambition, nor does it rewind for anyone's regret. Everyone must face the consequences of their choices. This is the iron law of life, also the essence of destiny. The fire of Beckett ceramics kilns continued to burn, as it had every night for 300 years. In this eternal light, tradition endures, traitors are punished, and guardians receive the final victory. This is not a fairy tale, it's reality. It's not a lesson, it's cause and effect. The estate gates slowly closed, leaving the hustle and bustle outside. On this land blessed by time, old stories continue and new legends are written. Moonlight poured like water, bathing every inch of land, witnessing how this 3-century-old ceramic empire remained unbroken amid storms, reborn from the ashes after betrayal and trials. If this story has resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.